Welcome to the Three Martini Lunch. Grab a stool next to Greg Columbus of Radio America and Jim Garrity of National Review. Three Martinis coming up.
Really glad you're with us for the Thursday edition of the Three Martini Lunch. Good, bad, crazy martinis today. And Jim, obviously it's a year divisible by 4, so the presidential campaign getting most of the attention in this election year, and certainly right now, given all the different elements happening in the presidential race. But there are a lot of other important races too, including House and Senate, some of the governor's races and other things on the ballot, depending on where you live. On the Senate side, right now it's 51-49 Democrats. Both sides, I think, pretty much admit that West Virginia is likely to go Republican, so that would make it 50-50, which makes a lot of other fairly competitive races really, really important, from Montana to Nevada and also Pennsylvania, all seats held by Democrats. In Pennsylvania, it's 3-term Democrat Bob Casey Jr., son of the former Democratic governor and pro-life Democrat. Those actually existed at one time. Bob Casey beat Rick Santorum in 2006, hasn't really had a tough race since. Now he's running against Dave McCormick, who lost the primary 2 years ago in the Fetterman Senate race to Dr. Oz. But now McCormick is the nominee for the Republicans, and it's a tight race. But the Republicans are going after Bob Casey, tying him in some ways to Joe Biden, or at least saying his political ties and issues involving his family seem reminiscent to the issues facing the first family. But here's the NRSC ad related to Bob Casey.
It's called the Casey Cartel because, like Biden, Bob Casey gets elected and his family gets richer. Casey got caught in a pay-to-play scheme with his brother's law firm. His other brother lobbies for a company tied to communist China. If that's not enough, Casey even paid his own sister $500,000 in campaign cash. It's the Casey Cartel way. Tell Bob Casey stop looking out for himself and start looking out for us.
That guy's got the quintessential attack ad voice. That's just perfect.
And John Williams-esque villain theme music. You know, you're almost ready to see the stormtroopers marching, or the thuggy cult, or the Nazis or Russians going after Indiana. That's
That's right. Exactly. Let's fill in the details a little bit more here, because NBC News, to its credit, did a story on this. It says Bob Casey wrote a wave of reform to the Senate in 2006, standing out with other Democrats who vowed to end a culture of scandal and self-dealing in Washington, D.C. That was the Jack Abramoff election and Duke Cunningham bribes and all sorts of bad things that happened. Nearly 2 decades later, Casey faces a tough fight for a 4th term, along with accusations that friends and family have benefited from his political career. There's a brother who registered to lobby for a semiconductor manufacturer soon after Casey supported a bill to expand opportunities for the industry. There's another brother whose law partner helps Casey recommend federal judges and whose firm's employees have donated more than $225,000 to Casey's campaigns, according to the Federal Election Commission. And there's a sister whose printing company has received more than $500,000 worth of work from Casey's campaigns. So, not accused of breaking any laws or officially violating any ethics rules, but when you kind of stake your reputation on being the cleanest of whistles in a dirty world of politics, this could potentially make some ground up against Senator Casey here. What do you think?
Yeah, I think most voters recognize that something can be legal and it can still stink. And it can still be something that you, the electorate, do not have to approve of and do not have to say, oh, there's nothing wrong with it. A couple of years ago, I think it was Crew, one of those organizations did a survey of the sheer number of members of Congress, I believe it was the House, and they said how many have somebody on their family either working in their congressional office, working on their campaign office, working in an affiliated political action committee, or some other way are they involved. And I believe it was like a total of close to 80 and about 40, but it was a lot. It was a lot, and I think by its, you may be, whoa, why don't more people make an issue of this? It's not quite that everybody does it, but a lot of people do it. And I think by and large, both members of Congress, the ethics committees, and the general public have come to the conclusion, if you have an idiot son or an idiot daughter or an idiot nephew, it's okay to give them a make work job with nothing more important than answering the phones or something like that. Like that's been a long-standing tradition in politics. And nobody can, everybody's got idiot relatives they need something to do with. And as long as you don't give them any actual responsibility and the salaries are reasonable, most people will say, okay, we're going to look the other way. I do wonder if this ad would run and if this would be as resonant if we hadn't been through the experience of Hunter Biden. Way back in the 2020 campaign, I had gone through Hunter Biden's entire employment career, and all of it was, the sort of opportunities that would not present themselves if you did not have the last name Biden. Lots of people go to work for MBNA. It's a big bank in Delaware. Very few people get named a vice president in their 20s, unless your last name is Biden and your father is a senator from Delaware. Hunter Biden had a lobbying gig. Now, that was by itself not illegal, and he said he never lobbied his dad, except it was still like, hey, Chris Dodd, it's your best friend's son here, Hunter. Hey, how do you feel about putting in this earmark? That kind of stuff. So, like, I do wonder if the public tolerance for this sort of thing is down than it was a couple of years ago, and that there's sense that there's been no limiting principle. This isn't just some, we have an idiot nephew who answers the phones. It is now, I'd be curious about how many other clients Casey's sisters has printing up flyers or whatever she's doing for the campaign. Again, nothing illegal about it, but it does look like it's a way to give her a pretty darn lucrative job and keep the business going when your brother can send millions of dollars your way. Same thing, should it be illegal for members of a lawmaker's family to be lobbyists? Some might say that restricts the First Amendment, but it looks bad. It just really, I kind of, my whole thing towards everybody, James Biden and all the others was like, if you're president of the United States, you get enormous privileges. It comes with responsibilities. One of those contradictions, okay, I can't have my family members being lobbyists and cashing in on my name. That seems like a very reasonable request to make of lawmakers. And it's gotten a lot of traction against Biden. We'll see if it makes traction. Also, I would note that there's a new poll out by a Republican firm, so take as many grains of salt as you deem appropriate. But it had Casey only up by 1 over McCormick. So this is a race to watch. It was always going to be interesting. And while Casey can overperform Biden's numbers in this state, I think there's a limit to it. So Biden at 45, they'll probably be okay. Biden at 40, Biden below 40, Bob Casey Jr. has got to worry a great deal.
One of these races that I had thought was kind of beyond the Republican reach, just because Casey had largely coasted, and he does a pretty good job of flying below the radar, so he doesn't do a lot of crazy things that make headlines over time. So he generally tends to wear well, even though he's as much of a lockstep liberal as anyone else in the Senate, even though he passes himself off as a moderate because his dad was.
My dad was pro-life. I mean, I totally want to abort everybody everywhere all the time and have taxpayers pay for it, but my dad was pro-life.
I always refer to him as Prince Valium from Spaceballs because he always looks like he's about to nod off. But we'll see what Bob Casey has up his sleeve and if Republicans can grab that seat. In the meantime, Field of Greens. Field of Greens is perfect to make sure that you are getting all the vitamins and minerals that you need. And even if you take supplements, you're going to still need fruits and vegetables. And the best way to do that is with Field of Greens. They don't do it like the other guys do. They grow their stuff right here in the U.S. They freeze dry it. They don't boil it, which takes out all the nutrients. Great for heart function, lung function, kidneys, your metabolism, and a whole lot more. Get Field of Greens.
Field of Greens is nutrition the way nature intended. It is 100% USDA organic fruits and vegetables. It's a superfood, not a supplement, and it works fast. It's got antioxidants, fiber, and prebiotics formulated by a team of physicians.
So don't look back and say, I should have paid attention to nutrition when I was younger. Field of Greens is a key to better health today and when it matters most. To start, Field of Greens will give you 15% off your first order plus free rush shipping. Visit fieldofgreens.com and use the promo code 3ML. That's promo code 3ML to get 15% off and free shipping at fieldofgreens.com. Fieldofgreens.com. All right, Jim, on to our bad martini now. And you and I have known this for a very long time, but we're getting a lot more evidence of this. Barack Obama is a big old liar. And we've seen it in a number of different ways just in the past couple of weeks, because the Hollywood fundraiser was just a few days before the debate. And in the wake of that debate, there was that video showing that Biden seemed to kind of freeze as he was about to exit the stage, and Obama grabbed his arm, tried to do it naturally, and kind of coax him off the stage. And a lot of people were saying, looks like Biden had another moment there, and Obama had to come to the rescue. Well, Eric Schultz, who works for Barack Obama, a senior advisor officially, just tweeted out in response to one of those stories from the New York Post, "This did not happen." Then on debate night, when everybody on the left was setting their hair on fire and acting like they had no idea that Joe Biden was having cognitive issues when we could see it easily back in the 2020 campaign, Obama tweets out, "Bad debate nights happen. Trust me, I know. But this election is still a choice between someone who has fought for ordinary folks his entire life and someone who cares only about himself." Yada, yada, yada. And so then we get the Clooney op-ed that we mentioned yesterday. And there were a lot of folks who said, you know, if Clooney went public with this, there's a pretty good chance that he ran this by Obama. And Politico says today that's exactly what happened. Obama was in touch with Clooney before the actor published his buzzy and brutal New York Times op-ed Wednesday calling on Biden to step aside. The two men who are friendly both attended the LA fundraiser Clooney referenced in his piece, where he said he'd beheld a diminished Biden and that the leader he had interacted with was the same man we all witnessed at the debate. Obama was obviously at the same thing. While Obama did not encourage or advise Clooney to say what he said, he also didn't object to it. People familiar with the exchange said. A representative for the Obama team declined to comment. So, Jim, it's probably a little too far to say this is like The Godfather, just kind of not saying anything when somebody comes up with an idea to take somebody out, figuratively in this case. But the idea that Barack Obama was out there going, "Everybody calm down, nothing to see here, just had a bad night." And then in the background, he's like, "George, do it."
So first of all, can we observe Greg has a drastically underrated Obama impression that you haven't gotten a chance to roll out as often. So it's probably my favorite moment of this morning so far is Joe Scarborough on Morning Joe, the president's favorite, news show, looking to the camera and saying, "The Biden campaign and many Democratic officials do believe that Barack Obama is quietly working behind the scenes to orchestrate this." All right. Now, my first thought is like, look, how often did we conservatives try to warn everybody, including Joe Biden, that Barack Obama's not a good guy? Don't trust him. Remember this idea that he's evil and all that stuff. It's just a matter of time before we see Joe Biden coming out and saying, "I don't think Barack was born in this country. I want to see the real birth certificate." And we could say, "Oh, what's the saying? Oh, what's something blanks we weave when we make an effort to deceive or something."
Webs we weave, yeah.
Webs we weave. Okay, so you think about it. Apparently, the choice for Barack Obama way back in the summer of 2008 came down to Joe Biden or Evan Bayh, was that then senator from Indiana? He wasn't governor, right?
Right. Yeah, he was senator then.
Now, I don't think Evan Bayh is the greatest guy in the world, but I do think that had that choice been made, Joe Biden retires quietly, and a lot of things go better in this world as a result of that. Maybe we have, Evan Bayh brings his own flaws to the table, but Joe Biden was not destined for the presidency until Barack Obama selected him as a running mate. And you heard a lot of jokes that, Barack Obama had selected Biden as assassination insurance, and or the idea that because Obama himself had found Biden long-winded and insufferable and all that stuff. But I think the thinking of the Obama campaign was, well, we need an old reliable to go with our new fresh face African-American presidential nominee. And also just kind of the recognition that Biden would not have his own independent base of support, and he would not. And the other thing I point out, and you and I have ripped Joe Biden 6 ways to Sunday every day of the week, twice on Sundays. But we will recognize that when he was vice president, Joe Biden understood his job was to eat a poop sandwich every day because Obama didn't want to. His job was to do all the stuff that Obama, so he understood the role of the vice presidency. Fast forward, but it's going back to Obama's, don't underestimate Joe's ability to F this up. The idea, like Obama never had warm, fuzzy, enormous confidence in Joe Biden. And intermittently, that came true. And Biden believes that Obama fairly clearly thought Hillary should be the nominee in 2016. He did not encourage Joe Biden to run in 2016. Your son just passed away. You're going through a tough time. Don't do it. Which is, by the way, if Obama were to go to Biden and say, "I think you can't do this anymore. I think you got to step down," I don't think Biden would be persuaded. I think there's actually a lot more bad blood between these two guys than anybody in the Democratic Party wants to acknowledge. But here we are. Look, if Obama thinks George Clooney should write this op-ed saying we can't win with this man and that there is no better Biden, what we saw on the debate is the real Biden, then shouldn't Obama come out and say this himself? Shouldn't he come out and why would you say, "Oh, I totally stand with Biden," if deep down you don't stand with it. It's been a little bit weird to see how uninvested Obama seems in ensuring Biden has a second term. Michelle Obama also reportedly isn't doing a lot of stuff. Again, an indicator, I think, that there's more bad blood between them. But look, if you don't think Joe Biden is up to the task, say so. Don't hint, don't allude, don't kind of imply, don't count on. Look, right now, we could argue if he was ever good at this, but really, America, Joe Biden is not a subtlety guy. He's not picking up on the hints. He's not picking up on winks and nods and small allusions indicating him. It's kind of, we joked about Pelosi saying, "Oh, whenever he makes the decision, whenever he makes it," even though Biden keeps insisting, "I am not leaving." Look, if Obama thinks, then he should, one, have that phone call with Joe or go over to the White House. Not expect Joe to change his mind, but also he should say so to the rest of the party. Like this, it's the presidency. He's commander in chief. He's going to be in office for the next 6 months, barring the 25th Amendment. So, let's treat this with the seriousness that it is. We discussed earlier in the week the doctor who said he believes that Biden has Parkinson's. We don't know if that's true. He has not gone through a cognitive test. He has not gone through a neurological exam. I can't help but wonder if the Bidens are worried that if they do that test, what the results are going to say. We are not meant to go through 6 months of the president being Mr. Magoo. It's not the Woodrow Wilson years anymore. We can't afford this. America's enemies are watching. The whole world is watching. So, Obama, if you got something to say, come out and say it. Don't act through an op-ed by Danny Ocean. The alternative... here's the thing. People are saying, "Oh, why should George Clooney have any say?" And well, because he's Batman. That's why. He's not the best Batman. There were more problems in that movie than just him. And Biden's condition is what it is. You can't wish it away. You can't point to Trump. You can't do any of that stuff. And if Obama's got something to say, he should come out and say it. And if he doesn't want to say it, then don't act through intermediaries to go hint. Biden shouldn't be the nominee anymore.
Yeah, and you make a good point that Obama's the reason we're in this situation, indirectly, obviously, from the decision back in 2008. I don't know if Biden would have retired. It's possible he'd be shuffling around on the Senate floor. Wouldn't be the first time we've seen people who were on the decline refusing to go away. Feinstein. He'd probably be breaking Robert Byrd's longevity record if he were still in the Senate, honestly. But you referred to Pelosi. We talked about that yesterday. I just want to play it again because there's this great tweet yesterday by Steve Krakauer, who produces Megyn Kelly's podcast, and it couches it as a conversation between the Democrats and the Biden family. Democrats, Joe, it's time to decide if you're staying in the race. Biden family, we're staying in. Dems, you don't have to decide today, but definitely soon. Biden family, we're in. Dems, let us know when you decide. Biden family, decision made, we're in. Dems, okay, but, and then it ends the tweet. And now listen to these quotes. Here's Pelosi from yesterday morning when NBC even tells her that the decision's been made.
So, Madam Speaker, you just went through the president's record, but let me ask you about the current moment. Does he have your support to be the head of the Democratic ticket?
As long as the president it's up to the president to decide if he is going to run. We're all encouraging him to make that decision because time is running short. I think overwhelming support of the caucus. It's not for me to say. I'm not the head of the caucus anymore, but he's beloved. He is respected, and people want him to make that decision, not me.
He has said he has made the decision. He has said firmly this week he is going to run. Do you want him to run?
I want him to do whatever he decides to do.
In Nancy's lingo, he's already decided. He's apparently not going to leave the race. And now here's Tim Kaine. And as Jim is fond of reminding us, he was actually a vice presidential nominee once upon a time. News Nation caught up with him in the hallway, and it sounded pretty similar to Nancy.
I have complete confidence that Joe Biden will do the patriotic thing for the country. And he's going to make that decision. He's never disappointed me. He's always put patriotism and the country ahead of himself, and I'm going to respect the decision that he makes.
Do you think he means that the patriotic thing is to do exactly what he's still doing?
Yeah.
I don't think so.
I think that's pretty good. Also, we are 2 days away from Biden saying, "I will not resign as the nominee," and everyone else in the Democratic Party saying, "You hear that? He said he's resigning as the nominee."
Some people won't take yes for an answer. I'll be curious to see if the questions at the press conference today are one question on Ukraine and then all the rest of
We're
that.
out of here. Yep. There.
So, crazy to see. But like we said yesterday, if you're Democrats and you're hitting the bottle, first of all, do it in moderation if you can. And
sounds like you need Z-Biotics.
You definitely need Z-Biotics to take before you start drinking. So when you wake up tomorrow, you'll be feeling better than you otherwise would have.
Are you a member of the Democratic Party who's been driven to drink? Well, Z-Biotics pre-alcohol probiotic drink is the world's first genetically engineered probiotic. It was invented by PhD scientists to tackle those rough mornings after drinking. Now, here's how it works. When you drink, alcohol gets converted into a toxic byproduct that's in your gut. And it's this byproduct, not dehydration, that's to blame for your rough next morning. Z-Biotics produces an enzyme that breaks down this byproduct. So just remember to make Z-Biotics your first drink of the night. Drink responsibly, as always, and you'll feel your best the following morning.
Go to zbiotics.com/3ml to get 15% off your first order when you use 3ml at checkout. Z-Biotics is backed with a 100% money-back guarantee, so if you're unsatisfied for any reason, they'll refund your money, no questions asked. Visit zbiotics.com/3ml and use the code 3ml at checkout for 15% off. Thank you, Z-Biotics, for sponsoring this episode and our good times.
U-Haul must really love Democrat-run states. The Watchdog on Wall Street podcast with Chris Markowski. Every day, Chris helps unpack the connection between politics and the economy and how it affects your wallet. The IRS has revealed the true exodus of Americans from places like California and New York to Florida and Texas in billions of adjusted gross income. People move, U-Haul wins. Whether it's happening in D.C. or down on Wall Street, it's affecting you financially. Be informed. Check out the Watchdog on Wall Street podcast with Chris Markowski on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast.
All right, Jim, we move from the delusion of President Biden to the delusion of one Bill Kristol. Remember Bill Kristol? He used to pretend to be a conservative as the editor and co-founder, I guess, of the Weekly Standard. He has, ever since Trump came on the scene, become a hardcore supporter of the Democrats, not just in races where Trump is involved, but across the board supporting Democrats. Now he's with the Bulwark, of course, and he tweeted out today that basically, really, Joe Biden's cognitive issues are really the only thing holding the Democrats back because everything else is awesome. Here's what he tweets. Democratic economic policies are basically sound. Democratic foreign policies are basically sound. The Democratic Party is basically sound. So nominate a non-octogenarian Democrat who can articulate a vision for the future and lead the country for the next 4 years. Jim, the Democrats are doing cartwheels today because inflation's down to 3% year over year, but we're still paying a whole heck of a lot more than we were 3 years ago, thanks to the worst inflation in 40 years there for a while. And the only reason it's down is because the Fed raised interest rates, and now they're hoping that because of this news, the Fed will actually bring interest rates down again. Foreign policy from Afghanistan to the Middle East to Ukraine to a lot of other things are all over the place. And the Democratic Party is not sound. We've got a massive fight over anti-Semitism and all sorts of other things happening that this party is in disarray about, not to mention Biden himself. So what do you make of Kristol trying to pull the Chip Diller here and saying all is well other than Biden when that's so obviously not true?
Well, there are a lot of bizarre wrinkles to all of this. By the way, I'll just remind people, Bill Kristol employed Tucker Carlson over at the Weekly Standard. You're talking about two guys who's just gone off. And it happens that, I think David Brooks was with them for a while and, but just two guys who have gone off in completely different directions. Yesterday, when the George Clooney op-ed comes out, Bill Kristol tweets, I guess George Clooney didn't get the memo. The party told you to reject the evidence of your eyes and ears. It was their final, most essential command. That's from 1984, correct? Right. So he's basically saying that there is this Orwellian big brother regime telling you to insist that everything is fine with Biden. And Clooney's not doing it. And he's, Kristol is mocking the rest of the Democratic Party for sticking with Biden. But then he puts this out and says, no, things are going fine. Now, Did you have a head injury? Did you get hit on the head and this total personality? Anyway, so I was reminded of an op-ed just probably about a week or two ago from Barton Swain, who writes for the Wall Street Journal. Sometimes he does book reviews. Sometimes he does writes for the editorial board. But he had this observation. I think it was a very fair and astute observation. Let's imagine that for the past 3.5 years, Joe Biden has not been elderly. Let's imagine he's as energetic as he ever was, and he's got the body of a much younger man, and the mind of a much younger man. He made the argument that, really, The problem, his argument was that Joe Biden's biggest problem isn't that he's old. Now, I'm not 100% sure I convinced it. Like, that's a really big problem. That's not the only, but that's a really glaring problem. But he made the observation that the real problem with Biden as president, running for re-election, is that he's been really lousy at the job. And you look at the point of the economy, inflation, and cost of living. You look at the border. You look at the 2 steps forward, 1 step back assistance for Ukraine. You look at Hamas and Israel. You look at on front after front. It's been a bad presidency. That there's a reason. It's like when Biden comes in with his approval rating around 37% and his disapproval rating around 57%. Some of that's, he's old and we don't, we think he's too old to keep doing the job. But a lot of it's just we don't like the state of the country right now. We don't think things are going great. And even if Biden himself is not a hard lefty on all kinds of cultural issues, his administration is staffed with all kinds of cultural issues. You look at the person who employed a whole bunch of people in the White House. It was Elizabeth Warren. Like, in a lot of ways, we ended up getting the Liz Warren presidency, at least in terms of staffing. And that's why it has not been a centrist Democratic presidency. This has been a pretty darn far left-wing presidency. And he keeps making bad decisions. And when he gets caught, he doubles down on those bad decisions. Like, you could argue Afghanistan was always going to be a messy issue to unravel, ending U.S. presence there was going to be hard. But Biden went out and gave a press conference in which he insisted that the Afghan army was the best trained and best equipped, and he had absolute faith in it to preserve the country, even as the Taliban was advancing closer and closer to Kabul. And he said, you're not going to see U.S. diplomats getting evacuated on helicopters. And then we saw exactly that. And people have talked about when was it clear, Biden was, age was catching up to him. You can point to the basement campaign of 2020, but at least there was the semi-plausible excuse of we don't want a guy in his 70s shaking hands with a lot of people. We don't want him pulling a Waffle House like he did immediately after the debate when he supposedly had that bad cold. You could at least say, okay, there was a reason to keep Biden away from crowds then. This is summer 2021. Biden's been in office for about 6 months, and Biden did not speak to the public for 3 days as Kabul was falling. When he did go out, he gave, he read off the teleprompter. He was not taking questions. Now, look, it's always like when you're president, think bad things are going to happen. And part of the job is going out and answering questions and taking your lumps and explaining what went wrong and blaming anybody else you can. That's kind of part of the normal part of being president. Biden couldn't do that. And when he finally did sit down for an interview with George Stephanopoulos, we'll notice, that was 4 or 5 days ago. It was a terrible one. He kept insisting that no one had told him to keep any military force in Afghanistan, except his, Milley and other military officials had testified that they had. Like, that was my first moment where I was like, because everyone's like, Biden's just lying. Maybe, and remember, that's the good explanation. That is the best case scenario. The worst case scenario is that Biden was indeed briefed, and he just can't remember. And it's very fair to wonder how much Biden remembers on any given day from the presidential daily briefing. So, do we have a president who can really do the job? Or is he walking around with this jumble of half-remembered facts and all that stuff? And that's one of the reasons that he's so, when he speaks, he's got a half a thought and then the voice trails off and he picks up with something else. And anyway, we are where we are, Bill Kristol. And the country's doing fine. No, it's not. If the country was doing fine, he'd probably be in much better shape. Americans were perfectly willing to forgive Bill Clinton for Lewinsky because the economy was roaring. If the country was in a great shape, people would be like, he's senile, but he's a good luck charm. Let's keep him in there. Americans make their decisions based on results, I would argue.
You got numbers on Biden, but you also have numbers on specific issues. He's been way underwater on the economy, well under 40% most of the time. The border, he's almost subterranean, and deservedly so. Foreign policy's no better. Both sides hate him on the Middle East situation because of how he's waffled and pandered and all sorts of other things. And so it's just pure delusion on the part of Bill Kristol that this is a record that you want to run on. And that's why Biden, up until he was fighting for his own survival, it's all about abortion and Trump and January 6th and all that stuff.
Yeah, I get the people who want to persuade Biden to not pursue another term. That heard this thing of a criticism sandwich, particularly when dealing with, I'm not even going to say millennials, Generation Zoomer, because you have younger interns who seem very competent, Greg. But I'm just going to observe the old saying was if you have to criticize someone, they're not going to react badly. You begin with a compliment, you give the criticism, and then you close with a compliment again. You put that, between the two pieces of bread, there's the criticism and it goes down easier. And for terms of dealing with it, that makes sense. But you feel everybody's, Joe, you've done an excellent job. You've really done a terrific, terrific job. We really want to give you the gold watch. We really want to see you ride off into the sunset. like Shane. Shane got shot, though, didn't he? Shane was dying. Maybe that metaphor isn't the one you want to use. But anyway, the idea that, we got to butter him up before we try to convince them to quit. No, this is it. This is not a phenomenally successful presidency. And I think the proof is in the pudding. And we're probably going to see the proof in it in November.
Jim Garrity, National Review. I'm Greg Corombos of Radio America. Thanks so much for being with us today. Do subscribe to the podcast if you don't already. Thanks for your 5-star ratings and your kind reviews. Please keep those coming. Get us on your home devices. All you have to say is play 3 Martini Lunch podcast. Follow us both on X. He's at Jim Garrity. I'm at Dateline_DC. Have a great Thursday and join us again Friday for the next 3 Martini Lunch.